The war between humanity and the Drixari had lasted for years. The Drixari, a massive alien race, had invaded Earth, their towering armored forms and relentless strategies leaving humanity on the edge of collapse. Every day, Earth's forces scrambled to hold their ground, and every night, the fear of losing it all gnawed at the hearts of billions. It was in the middle of one such battle that the unexpected happened. On a day when the sky was filled with the burning smoke of war and the ground trembled with explosions, a strange message crackled through Earth's communication channels. It was not from the enemy. No, it came from their own leaders. The transmission was from the Drixari general himself, Thalvok. Thalvok was not like the others. He was the one they had all feared the most, the towering figure of death on the battlefield. Standing at 12 feet tall, his skin was like gray stone, his eyes burning with the intensity of his people's endless war. His reputation was that of a merciless commander, striking fear into the hearts of every soldier who faced him. Yet, now, he was offering something completely unexpected. The message began with a single sentence that sent shivers through the military command centers across the globe. "Send me the human named HFY, and I will end the war." The world paused. The name HFY wasn't a random choice. HFY was a linguist, a human trained to communicate with alien species. She had played a key role in Earth's initial contact with the Drixari, helping negotiate the first tenuous lines of communication. Yet she never imagined that her skills would lead to such a strange and dangerous request. HFY was sitting at her desk when the message arrived. The holographic screen in front of her flickered to life, showing the face of General Thalvok in stark clarity. His voice was deep, commanding, yet there was something unexpected in his tone. "HFY, your people have suffered greatly. I have decided to offer a solution that will bring an end to this conflict. But there is a condition. I demand your hand in marriage." She blinked, wondering if she had heard him wrong. "Marriage?" she repeated, her voice shaking with disbelief. "Yes," Thalvok responded. "If you agree to marry me, the war will be over. I will call off the invasion, and peace will be restored between our people." HFY stared at the screen, unable to process the absurdity of the request. Marriage to the leader of the Drixari? It felt like a cruel joke. She had expected negotiations, perhaps even more threats, but not this. But it was not just any marriage he was proposing. It was one that could end the war. Her mind raced. Could this really be the way to stop the bloodshed? Could this man, this alien, be serious? Or was this just another form of manipulation, another twisted game? Before she could respond, the screen flickered again and Thalvok's towering figure disappeared. The room fell silent, the weight of the message settling on her like a heavy blanket. HFY's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what to think. She had never considered the possibility that one person, let alone herself, could hold the fate of the world in their hands. Yet here it was. She was being asked to make a decision that could save billions of lives, or condemn them to further war. Her mind flashed back to her time during the early days of the invasion. The long meetings, the tense negotiations, the moments of hope that were always dashed by another attack. She had seen the destruction firsthand, the way the Drixari came in waves, crushing everything in their path. And she had seen the resilience of humanity, how people fought not just for survival but for something greater. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of her communicator. It was a call from Earth's High Command. "HFY, we need you here. Now," said the voice on the other end. It was Captain Lee, the officer who had been coordinating Earth's defense efforts. "We've all seen the message. We're trying to figure out what to do next. We need your expertise." HFY didn't respond immediately. Her mind was still reeling. How could she even begin to process what had just happened? Marrying an alien? The thought seemed impossible, yet the idea of peace tugged at her heart. It could work. It had to work. She stood up, pacing the small room she had been confined to for weeks. The walls felt like they were closing in on her. She had spent her career helping her people understand and communicate with alien species, but nothing had prepared her for this. She quickly made her way to the command center, where a small group of military and diplomatic leaders had gathered to discuss the next steps. The atmosphere was tense, everyone speaking in hushed tones as if they were afraid to utter the wrong words. As Ji-hai entered the room, all eyes turned to her. Captain Lee, a tall man with a face etched with exhaustion, stood up and gestured for her to take a seat. "We need your advice, Ji-hai," he said. "What do we do about Thalvok? Do you think he's serious?" Ji-hai took a deep breath, trying to steady her thoughts. "I think he's serious," she said slowly. "But I also think there's more to this than just a marriage proposal. I need to understand what he really wants. Why me? Why now?" The room fell silent again, everyone waiting for her next words. "I think," Ji-hai continued, "he's offering us a chance to end the war. But it's not just about peace, it's about something deeper. There's a reason he's choosing me. I don't know what it is yet, but I intend to find out." Captain Lee nodded, his face grim. "And what will you do?" Ji-hai paused, her gaze shifting to the window, where the faint glow of Earth's remaining cities could be seen in the distance. "I'm going to meet him. I'm going to hear him out." The decision had been made. The weight of it was enormous, but Ji-hai knew what she had to do. The future of humanity was in her hands, and whether it meant making a terrible sacrifice or securing a lasting peace, she would face it head-on. As Ji-hai prepared to meet Thalvok, her thoughts were a whirl of confusion and fear. She didn't know what was coming, but she knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. The following morning, Ji-hai stood in the quiet of her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She wasn't sure what she expected to see. Fear, courage, confusion. It was all there, but there was one emotion that stood out above the rest: doubt. What was she about to do? Meet with the general of an alien species that had brought nothing but destruction to Earth. And yet, there was a strange sense of responsibility resting on her shoulders, like the weight of the world had been placed there by invisible hands. The decision had been made, and she was about to step into the unknown. Outside her window, a Drixari ship hung in the sky, its massive form casting a shadow over the Earth below. It was like a dark cloud, a reminder of the enemy that had been both feared and hated for so long. But now it represented something else, a chance at peace. Maybe. She wasn't sure yet. Ji-hai had been chosen to meet Thalvok in person. She wasn't sure why. She had never thought of herself as particularly important, but she did know that she had the knowledge to understand the Drexari language, their customs, and their culture. That might be why Thalvok had singled her out. Or maybe it was something deeper. A small shuttle arrived to take her to the Drexari flagship. The ride felt like an eternity, though it lasted only a few minutes. When Ji-hai stepped off the shuttle, she was greeted by a group of Drexari soldiers, their eyes burning with intensity as they watched her every move. They were massive, even more so than she had imagined. Each one of them stood at least 9 feet tall, their bodies covered in thick, dark armor. They looked like giants, and Ji-hai suddenly felt very small. One of the soldiers, a female warrior with sharp, angular features, stepped forward and addressed her in the human language. "You are Ji-hai," she said in a deep, commanding voice. "I am Rani. I will guide you to the general." Ji-hai nodded silently, still unsure of what to say. Rani didn't wait for any response, instead turning on her heel and leading the way. Ji-hai followed closely behind, her footsteps echoing in the large metallic halls of the Drexari ship. The further they went, the more Ji-hai realized how vast the ship was. It was like a floating city, with winding corridors and rooms filled with alien technology. The walls seemed to hum with energy, and the air was thick with a strange metallic scent. Everything about the ship felt cold and alien, but there was a certain beauty to it as well. It was a place built for war, but there was also a sense of order and purpose. It wasn't just a vessel of destruction, it was a symbol of the Drexari, people's strength. Eventually they reached a large chamber. The doors opened and Ji-hai stepped inside. There, in the center of the room, stood Thalvok. His towering figure filled the space, his dark gray skin gleaming in the soft, artificial light. He was even more imposing up close. His eyes, burning with an intensity that could crush mountains, locked onto Ji-Hai as she entered the room. She felt a chill run down her spine. His presence was overwhelming, like a storm about to break. "Ji-Hai," Thalvok said, his voice low and deep like a rumble of thunder. "I am pleased that you have come. I was not sure if you would accept my invitation." Ji-Hai stood still, for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't sure what kind of greeting was appropriate for a 12-foot alien warlord. She tried to steady her breath, reminding herself that she was here to negotiate, not to cower in fear. "I didn't have much choice," Ji-Hai replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "You made a very unusual proposal." Thalvok's lips twitched slightly, the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. "It is unusual, yes," he said, stepping closer. "But it is also necessary." There was a pause as they both regarded each other. Ji-Hai couldn't help but notice the strange mix of seriousness and something else in Thalvok's gaze. Was it sincerity? Or was it all just part of a larger strategy? She couldn't tell. "I understand that my offer is difficult to believe," Thalvok continued. "But I assure you, I am not playing a game. I have risked much to make this request." Ji-Hai frowned slightly. "Risked much?" she repeated. "What do you mean?" Thalvok's expression darkened. "I am not the only one in charge of my people. My war council does not agree with my decision to seek peace. They want victory at any cost. If they learn of this meeting, they will see it as a betrayal. And yet I have made this offer because I believe it is the only way to end this war." Ji-Hai took a step back, her mind racing. The general was defying his own people? This was bigger than she had imagined. The Drexari were known for their strict hierarchy, their unwavering commitment to war. For Thalvok to go against them was not just a personal risk, it was a political one as well. "Why me?" Ji-Hai asked, her voice softer now. "Why did you choose me?" Thalvok was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on her. "You are the one who understands us," he said finally. "You are the one who speaks our language, who sees the truth of what we are. The humans have failed to communicate with us. But you have the ability to bridge the gap." Ji-Hai felt a strange mix of pride and discomfort. Was it really true? Was she the key to peace? She had never thought of herself as anything special, but here she was standing before the most powerful alien warlord in the galaxy, with the fate of both her people and his hanging in the balance. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "If you want peace, why does it have to be through marriage? Why not a treaty or negotiations?" Thalvok's eyes softened just a little. "A treaty is a document, Ji-Hai. Words on paper. But marriage is a bond. It is a promise, a symbol that can unite two peoples. A union of two individuals can change everything. It shows that we are no longer enemies but equals." It was a strange way to think, but Ji-Hai could see the logic in it. To the Dressari, this wasn't just a political decision. It was a cultural one. To them, a marriage was not just a union of two people. It was a union of entire worlds. "I don't know if I can do this," Ji-Hai said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thalvok studied her for a long moment, his gaze intense, but not unkind. "I understand. This is not an easy choice. But think of what it could mean. Think of the lives that could be saved, the suffering that could end." Ji-Hai nodded slowly, her mind swirling with possibilities and fears. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this. But there was one thing she did know for sure. The future of both humanity and the Dressari depended on the decision she was about to make. The chamber was silent, save for the distant hum of the ship's engines. Ji-Hai stood there, facing a future she never expected. Peace was within her grasp. But at what cost? Ji-Hai could hardly sleep that night. The events of the day had left her mind spinning in endless circles. The vastness of the Drexari ship felt even larger now, as if the walls were closing in on her, and the weight of her decision pressed down on her chest. She had met Thalvok, the alien general who offered peace but at a cost no one could have predicted. She had always believed in negotiation and diplomacy, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The promise of peace seemed almost too good to be true. One simple agreement, a marriage, could stop the war. She had to admit the thought of saving billions of lives tugged at her heart. But something inside her still doubted the sincerity of Thalvok's offer. There was something he wasn't telling her, something hidden beneath his calm demeanor. And if she was going to make a decision as important as this, she needed to understand it fully. The next day, Jihai met with Rani, the Drexari warrior who had guided her through the ship the day before. Rani was not only a warrior but also a cultural liaison, meant to help Jihai understand the Drexari way of life. She had been kind to Jihai, yet there was something in her eyes that made Jihai uneasy. It wasn't fear, at least not fear of her, but something else. Suspicion? Caution. Rani, Jihai said as they walked through the vast halls of the ship. I need to know more. Thalvok. He says this marriage will end the war, but I have to ask, what does he really want? Why me? Rani's sharp gaze flickered briefly, but she said nothing. Instead, she led Jihai to a small room at the back of the ship, where a table with a strange device sat in the center. It was covered in symbols and glowing lines, something Jihai had never seen before. This, Rani said, is a recording device. It will help you understand things that Thalvok may not be able to say openly. Jihai raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? What's hidden from me? Rani hesitated, her expression softening. The truth is, not all Drexari agree with Thalvok. He has made enemies, and his decision to seek peace has angered many of our leaders. Some of us, like myself, support him, but there are others who want war no matter what. And Thalvok's position, it is fragile. Jihai took a deep breath. So, you're saying that Thalvok is taking a huge risk? That's why he's asking for marriage? To secure peace? Rani nodded slowly. Yes, but it's more than that. Thalvok does not just seek peace with your people. He seeks something deeper, something that will change the way Drexari live forever. His people are bound by tradition, by a never-ending cycle of conflict. Marriage between an enemy and a Drexari is a symbolic act, one that represents the breaking of old chains. But for Thalvok, it's also a way to break free of the Drexari warlords who control him. Jihai's mind raced. So, if I marry him, I'm not just ending the war, I'm helping him change his own people? Rani's eyes were filled with something that looked like pity. Yes, but it is not an easy road. Many will resist. Thalvok has enemies, both within and outside his own ranks. They will stop at nothing to ensure the war continues, and they will use any means to make sure you fail. Jihai felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a political decision. It was a gamble, a dangerous game with high stakes. She wasn't just marrying a general, she was becoming part of a revolution. Could she trust Thalvok? Was he truly committed to peace, or was this just another trap to control her? The conversation weighed heavily on her as she returned to her quarters. It was clear now that Thalvok had more at stake than she had realized. He wasn't simply offering peace for his people. He was risking everything, his position, his life, and the future of his people, just for a chance at change. But could she really trust him? Later that night, Jihai received an unexpected message. It was encrypted, and the sender was anonymous. The message flashed onto her screen. You are being used. Do not trust the Drexari general. He is manipulating you to further his own goals. His promises of peace are empty. If you go through with this, you will doom humanity. Jihai's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the words, feeling a cold knot form in her stomach. Who was this, and why did they warn her? The message was filled with suspicion and fear, but was it justified? Could Thalvok's motives really be so dark? Or was this a trick by his enemies to stop the peace? The message lingered in her mind as she tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. She tossed and turned, the weight of the decision pressing down harder with every passing hour. Was this some kind of trap? Was she being manipulated? Or was this the only chance for true peace? As the days passed, Jihai found herself in a constant state of confusion. On one hand, there were the words of Rani and Thalvok, both speaking of a new future, a future where the Drixari would change and stop their endless cycle of war. On the other hand, there was the anonymous message, filled with warning and doubt. Jihai knew she had to make a choice, but it was not a simple one. She wasn't just choosing her own future, she was choosing the fate of two worlds, two species. Could one marriage truly end an entire war? Could she trust Thalvok's promise? Or was he simply using her as a pawn in a larger game? In the end, Jihai decided to confront Thalvok. She couldn't make this decision in the dark. She needed answers, answers that only he could provide. That afternoon, she walked into his chamber, her steps echoing in the silence. Thalvok was there, standing by the window, his massive figure casting a long shadow across the room. His back was to her, but he didn't need to turn around to know she had entered. "Jihi," Thalvok said quietly, his voice as calm and steady as always. "You have questions?" "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "I need the truth." "What? Are you really after Thalvok? What do you want from me?" Thalvok turned to face her, his piercing eyes locking with hers. "I want peace, Jihai, and I want change. I want to break the chains that bind my people to war, but I cannot do it alone. I need you, and I need your trust." Jihai studied him, searching for any sign of dishonesty, but all she saw was determination. For the first time, she believed in his words. "I will marry you," Jihai said, her voice strong, "but I need to know one thing. If I do this, if we succeed, what will you do next? What kind of world will we be building together?" Thalvok smiled, a rare sight. "A better one. A world where war is not the only answer. A world where understanding, not violence, leads the way." For the first time, Jihi felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could build something better. The day had come. Jihai stood before a large assembly in the Drixari ship's grand hall, her heart racing. Around her, the atmosphere was tense, filled with both anticipation and fear. She had made the decision to marry Thalvok, but she hadn't anticipated just how heavy the weight of that promise would feel. Thalvok stood beside her, towering over the humans in attendance. His presence was undeniable, even more so now that they were in this public space, where the fate of both their species seemed to hang in the balance. Jihai could feel the eyes of the Drexari leaders on her, their cold, judgmental gazes assessing her every move. Some of them were curious, others were full of disdain. This wasn't just about her and Thalvok anymore. It was about the future of two worlds, two races. "You're sure about this?" Rani's voice came from behind Jihai. She was standing nearby, a silent guardian to ensure that everything went according to plan. Jihai turned to face her. "Yes," Jihai said, her voice steady, though her nerves threatened to make it waver. "I'm sure. I've made my choice." Rani gave her a slight nod, though it didn't fully mask the concern in her eyes. "Remember, Jihi, there are many here who don't want this peace. They will try to break you apart. Stay strong." Jihi nodded, though she wasn't sure if she could stay strong enough. What if Rani was right? What if the people around her were only playing a game, using her as a tool to achieve something they didn't reveal? She had to trust that her decision was the right one. She had to trust that peace in the end was worth the risk. The ceremony began. The hall filled with the sounds of Drexari chants, deep, rhythmic voices reverberating through the room. Felt alien, but in a way it was also beautiful. Jihai took a deep breath and looked up at Thalvok. The massive general stood tall, his sharp features softened slightly in the dim light, his expression serious but calm. For a moment, Jihai almost felt like they were the only two people in the room. The rest of the world seemed to fade away, as Talvok's eyes met hers. "Are you ready?" Talvok's voice was soft, though it carried a quiet strength. It was the same voice that had promised peace, the same voice that had made her believe, even if only for a brief moment, that this war could truly end. Jihai nodded. "I'm ready." Talvok extended his hand, the size of it almost swallowing Jihai's small frame as she took it. His fingers were cold, but his grip was firm and steady. For the first time, she felt a connection to him, not as an enemy, not as a general, but as something more. Someone who was willing to take a step toward peace, even at the cost of everything he knew. The ceremony continued with more chanting, and Jihai felt the eyes of both the Drexari and human representatives on her. She could hear whispers among the humans, but their words were hard to decipher, their distrust clear in every glance. They didn't trust the Drexari, and they didn't trust her for making this decision. But Jihai wasn't here for their approval. She was here for a future. When the moment arrived, the elder of the Drexari stepped forward. His voice was deep, ancient, and filled with authority as he spoke the words of the ritual. Jihai was barely listening. Instead, she focused on the weight of Talvok's hand in hers and the certainty that this moment, this decision, would shape everything that came after. The elder's voice broke through her thoughts as he turned to Jihai. "Do you, Jihai of Earth, take Talvok of the Drexari as your mate, to join in the bonds of peace and unity, and to share in the future of our people?" Jihai felt her heart skip a beat. There was no turning back now. Her answer wasn't just a word, it was a promise, a commitment to both humanity and the Drexari. She glanced up at Talvok, who stood taller than ever, waiting for her answer with unwavering confidence. There was something in his eyes that told her this moment meant as much to him as it did to her. "I do," Jihi said, her voice clear and firm. The hall seemed to hold its breath. The elder nodded slowly, and then he turned to Talvok. "And do you, Talvok, General of the Drexari, take Jihai of Earth as your mate? To stand beside her in the fight for peace and the future of your people?" Talvok's gaze never wavered from Jihai as he spoke, his voice deep and strong. "I do." The room was silent, and then the elder lifted a symbol of unity, a large stone pendant adorned with glowing symbols, and placed it around both Jihai and Talvok's necks. The symbols glowed brighter with each passing second, until they were a blinding light, and then just as quickly the light faded. "By the bonds of the Dressari and the earth, you are now united," the elder said. "May your union bring peace, strength, and understanding to both your worlds." The ceremony was over. Jihi stood there, still holding Talvok's hand, feeling the weight of the moment settle in her chest. She had done it. She had committed herself to something much larger than herself, and as she looked around the room, she saw mixed reactions. Some Drexari bowed their heads, respecting the ritual. Others, especially the warlords in the back, glared at her with barely disguised hatred. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The marriage might have been a symbol of peace, but it was also a symbol of change, and change was never easy. There would be resistance, both from those who didn't believe in peace and from those who didn't trust her. But as she looked up at Talvok, she knew one thing for sure: this was the right choice. When the ceremony ended, the two of them were escorted to a private chamber. It was a large room with windows that showed the vastness of space beyond. Jihi felt small again, but this time, the feeling was different. She was no longer just a human caught in a war. She was now part of something bigger. Talvok stood beside her, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the room. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There were no more rituals, no more ceremonies, just the two of them and the quiet weight of their new life together. Finally, Talvok turned to her, his expression softer than Jihai had ever seen. "You've made a powerful choice, Jihai. This is just the beginning. The road will be difficult, but we will face it together." Jihai met his gaze, feeling something shift inside her. It wasn't just a promise, it was a commitment to build something that neither of them had ever imagined. "I hope you're right," she said, her voice quieter now. But I can't do it alone. I need you too. Thalvok nodded, a rare, genuine smile crossing his face. You will never be alone. We will face this future together. And as they stood there, in the vast chamber aboard the Drexari ship, Jihai couldn't help but feel that for the first time in a long while, the future felt possible. Together, they might just be able to change everything. The days following Jihai's marriage to Thalvok were filled with tension. The entire Drexari ship seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the first signs of change. Jihai had hoped that after the ceremony things would feel different, that peace would begin to settle into their lives, but instead it felt like the weight of the decision had only grown heavier. Every conversation, every glance from a Drexari warrior felt like a reminder that she had stepped into something much larger than herself. Jihai knew she had made the right choice. The war needed to end. The suffering needed to stop. But there were still so many unknowns. How would the Drexari leadership react to this marriage? Would they accept it as a true step toward peace, or would they see it as a weakness to exploit? She spent the next few days in the Drexari capital, a sprawling city built deep within the ship. It was a strange metallic place with towering walls and strange, unfamiliar technology everywhere. Jihai felt like an outsider in every corner of the place. Still, Thalvok remained by her side, guiding her through this strange new world. He was patient with her, explaining things, showing her the Drexari culture and way of life. His presence gave her a sense of comfort, but she knew that peace was never going to come easily. One afternoon, Thalvok took Jihai to a vast garden inside the ship, a beautiful, serene place filled with alien plants and soft, glowing light. It was a peaceful retreat from the cold, metallic walls of the Drexari ship, a place where Jihai could almost forget the war that still raged outside. They sat together on a stone bench, and Thalvok turned to her, his expression serious. "There are those who oppose us," he said quietly. "Not everyone in my empire believes in the peace we seek. Many still want war, and they will do anything to stop us." Jihai looked up at him, feeling a sense of dread settle in her stomach. "How bad is it? How many are against this?" "Enough," Thalvok said, his voice low but firm. "There are factions within the Drexari who are powerful, dangerous. They believe that war is the only way for their people to survive. They fear that peace will weaken them, that they will lose their dominance. We must be careful." Jihai nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The marriage was a symbol of peace, but to some it was a sign of weakness. If the Drexari leadership saw it as a betrayal, they might try to tear it apart, and that could be disastrous for both humans and Drexari. "Is there anything we can do?" Jihai asked. "Is there a way to stop them?" Thalvok's eyes darkened, and he leaned in closer to her. "We must change their minds. We must show them that peace is the only way forward, that the future can be stronger if we work together. I have made many enemies, but I have also made allies. It will take time, but I will not give up. We cannot let them destroy what we have started." Jihai felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about a marriage anymore. It was about two entire worlds, about millions of lives that could be saved. She couldn't back down now. "I won't let you fight alone," Jihai said, her voice steady. "We'll do this together." Thalvok gave her a rare smile, a look of gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Jihai. You have more courage than, you know." Days turned into weeks, and Jihai continued to adjust to her new life. The Drexari people were, for the most part, wary of her, but there were a few who were supportive of her and Thalvok's decision. Rani, the Drexari warrior, who had been so kind to Jihai from the start, remained by her side. She helped Jihai learn the ways of Drexari culture, explaining the rituals and customs that Jihai would need to understand if she was going to truly fit into this world. One evening, as Jihai sat in their shared quarters, looking out at the stars through the large window, she felt a sense of quiet peace. It was hard to explain, but the stars seemed to hold a promise that things could get better, that they could find a way out of the darkness. Suddenly, the door to her room opened and Thalvok stepped inside. He looked troubled, his brow furrowed in thought. "What's wrong?" Jihai asked, standing up from her chair. There's been an incident, Thalvok said, his voice tense. Some of my enemies have taken action. They've attacked one of our supply ships, a message that they will not tolerate this peace. Jihi's heart sank. What do we do? How do we stop them? Thalvok's eyes were hard as stone. We fight back. We show them that we will not be intimidated. We will not back down. Jihi felt a chill run down her spine. She had known. There would be resistance, but she had hoped that the peace would hold even for a little while. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. The battle for peace had only just begun. We can't let this stop us, Jihai said, more to herself. Then to Thalvok. We can't let them tear everything down. Thalvok nodded. No, we won't. But we have to be careful. We cannot allow this to escalate into full-blown war again. We must show them that peace is not a weakness, but a strength. Jihai understood. The fight for peace would not be won in a single battle. It would take time, patience, and trust. But she believed in what they were doing. She believed in the future they were trying to build. As the days passed, Jihi and Thalvok worked together to strengthen their position. They met with allies, spoke to neutral factions, and tried to win the hearts and minds of those who were still uncertain. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast, but slowly they began to make progress. The Drexari leadership wasn't united, but there were enough people who wanted peace to give Jihai hope. Then one day the message they had been waiting for came. A group of Drexari warlords who had opposed the marriage and the peace it represented had been defeated in a crucial battle. The attack on the supply ship had been the tipping point. Thalvok had sent his forces to respond, showing that they would not let their enemies destroy everything they had worked for. The victory was small, but it was significant. It proved that peace was not just a dream, it was something real, something worth fighting for. The warlords who had tried to destroy the peace were in retreat, and for the first time it seemed like the Drexari people were beginning to accept the possibility of a new future. Jihi stood beside Thalvok in the control room looking out at the stars. This was not the end, but it was a victory, and it was a step toward the future. Thalvok turned to her, his expression softer than it had been in days. We've taken the first step, Jihai. There's still a long road ahead, but we're on the right path. Jihai smiled, feeling a quiet sense of peace settle over her. I think we can do it. We can build a future together. And as the stars glittered outside the window, Jihai realized that for the first time in a long while she truly believed it. The war wasn't over, but there was hope. There was a chance for peace. And with Thalvok by her side, she knew they could change the future, for both the Drexari and for humanity. Together they would fight for that future no matter what it took.